Another Tuesday, another Compliance Tuesday. Welcome all at this important topic, Digital Product Passport, and slash to EcoDesign, because that regulation actually mentioned Digital Product Passport as well as others. So I thought we do a sidestep to that, but only limited. We have done sessions on this topic before. For those who don't know Product IP, we are a web-based software as a service, which is called SaaS solution for companies in manufacturing, retail, and trade of non-food consumer goods. Don't forget that non-food, the scope of product products is quite broad. You know, if you look at what you can buy in a DIY store these days, some would say these are semi-professional products. Interesting thing about working with Product IP is that when you put everything in a kind of a framework, you will get more data on the performance of yourself and your own team and your suppliers, which helps you to make decisions. After all, product compliance is all about asking the right questions and having an opinion about answers that you don't get. My name is Casper de Horst. I'm one of the two founders. We are with a team of 60 at this moment, serving around 30,000 users globally. You might also know us from sponsoring Kimberly Boss. Although it's a winter sport, she is already training for the next skeleton season starting somewhere in November. We're looking forward to those sessions again. High-speed challenges. This is kind of a pressure cooker session, so you don't need to read all the slides. The slides are also a little bit for you, but we ever mentioned the word the tsunami from Brussels, highlighting the fact that there's a lot of regulation and directives being new, but also modified from Brussels. Coming towards us, not 10, not 20, not 50, maybe even 100 plus. There's actually 600 legal trains waiting to drive away from station Brussels, as they say it in Europe. We as Product IP have to read them all in order to understand what is the impact for you. This results in around 400 updates a month in our system. Could be database or could be functionality. So going back to the theme of today, the Digital Product Passport. This is not something that we can build overnight. This is not something that anybody can build overnight, but we need to start building it based on the information we already had, which could be fragmented, because we need to be ready when you need to start using it. And that need to start using it differs a little bit around different products. You can look at legislation in Brussels one by one and thinking what's the impact. You can also read between the lines. And if you read between the lines, then they don't change the toys directive because children are starting to behave different. They don't change the battery legislation or packaging legislation because the functionality of a battery or packaging is changing. They do that because we consume more and we are not altering the way we consume or what we consume in order to make it, let's say, less waste of material, and how can we prepare these products for being reused again. They don't update legislation because of changing in new electrons being invented. So it's all about the world that is changing around us and the way we are dealing with maybe like new supply chain rules. The way how we put products on the market is different today than 10 years ago. So if you look at them one by one and try to, let's say, ditch them or counter them, you'll be in for the wrong game. You need to start to read between the lines, and you need to understand what's in between the lines and see, okay, this is long-term goals, which is true because Brussels talks about 2030, 35, 40 even. What will this mean for my business? How can I adapt this? And what do I need to do different in the future than I do today? Because, and you will get this message very clear from me today. If you still believe you can do your business tomorrow in the same way you did yesterday, you're in for a big surprise, because you'll probably be out of business. And I'm not making a joke here. You will see the slides building up, looking at what's coming from Digital Product Passport. This is really a completely different ballgame. So reading between the lines is about supply chain due diligence, knowing where you buy products and where your suppliers buy products and having an opinion about that. Somebody asked, is the record available to watch after the meeting? Yes, YouTube later, end of this week. It's about empowering consumers to make the right decisions. Similar products, a little bit different pricing, different spec, but all within the framework that we say, yeah, these are all allowed. But what is the difference? Okay, sometimes it's the quality of the product in terms of after so many recharges, the battery is still so good, or like it's like energy labels, you know, the products are all allowed, but some use a little bit more energy than others. Circular economy, can we reuse products? Can we design them to be reused? Not voluntarily anymore. We had our chance, basically, especially a lot of large corporations made all kind of agreements with Brussels. We're going to change this, we do it by ourselves, don't need to put a lot of legal pressure, we understand this. But we didn't. So we are all responsible for this. And very important, very important. Most of us deal with product compliance now on what I call a SKU-based rhythm. We have a new article or a family of article, and we collect information around that article. This will change into batch-based rhythm. So the frequency will go up because you will need to be able to tell and share information about the batch that you put on the market. And this is not for all products at the same time. So the difficulty with this layered approach, where the framework is made by Brussels, and that is with this legislation as well, and where Brussels actually has the chance to activate within the framework the set of rules for one product category now, one product category then, really requires a lot of reading and monitoring. So to be honest, I don't understand how you can Google and maintain this with Excels. It's a hell of a job for us. It would even be more hell of a job for you guys. So we all know the pictures, but I want to show them again. Whilst we are talking and watching, things are happening on this planet. I don't blame you. I could blame myself. I'm a consumer. You are a consumer. So ultimate, when we quit our job at the end of the day, we become a consumer as well. And we go sometimes for price and sometimes for cheap and cheerful. And if we want the world to change a little bit, we need to change a little bit the way we present products to consumers, but also maybe the selection of products. So it is with the old bulb that was there and is no longer there. Not every product can survive this change. Not every product can survive this change. Not every business model with a certain MOQ on certain products can survive this change. Because if the effort goes up in order to be able to meet compliance, then this becomes a true cost of business. And that is exactly the goal of all this legislation. We need to reduce waste or reuse it, then it's no cold waste. And we need to increase circularity. Last year on the, I think it was the HKTDC electronics show in Hong Kong, I talked briefly with a guy on a booth, and he claimed to be the largest producer of non-rechargeable batteries. And I asked him what he thought about the new legislation coming around battery and the fact that there will be kind of a, you can call it an energy label, but a performance label for batteries. And he said, I don't believe in this legislation because only 3% of the batteries bought by consumers are rechargeable. And I walked away and thought by myself, this guy really doesn't understand that is exactly the reason why legislation is needed. Because we cannot continue to consume batteries that we use one time and throw away. So it's like the glass is half full or the glass is half empty, or the glass can be refilled. And in this case, the glass should be able to be refilled. Yeah. This has a huge impact. You know, if you are buying products with batteries included, and batteries need to be able to get out, it's not allowed to throw away a perfectly good product just because the battery is dead. Yeah, because the price of a battery is just a small part of the product cost. These are all things that really have impact, and there's not a lot of time often. There are lead times in legislations, 1 year, 2 years, sometimes even 3 years, where you might have the feeling, okay, I can sit back and relax a little bit because there's still a lot of time. But if you look at the complexity of logistics and the insecurity about lead times of containers sailing now around the south part of Africa towards us, I think most of you are actually already busy 9, 12 months ahead. So you're already losing 1 year of that lag time. So I don't envy you. It's really complex. I would like you to show you this picture too, and it might be a great picture, and the links I will share with you as well. It's called Country Overshoot Day. Basically, it's like this. It's based on the size of the country and the population of a country. We would have like a claim on the resources of this planet. At what moment in a year we have used up our claim? And you'll be in for surprises, because some countries actually, they need to import a lot, and therefore their claim is quite early gone. So the ideal world would be that this would be at the end of the year. Yeah. But the reality is that these dates are moving closer to January every year again. So we are growing our consumption, and we are not doing it in a smart way. This is not my message. This is the general message. Yeah. And we all can have an opinion about it. But the reality is that this is causing the legislation to be as it is today. Yeah. And it will become more stringent, because if we don't do it, this won't change. But Country Overshoot Day might be a very nice way for your internal team to get aligned. I said it already. I say it again. The way we do business today is not sufficient for tomorrow. It drastically has to change. And I think halfway this presentation, you probably already start to agree with me. As I say in some of my risk assessment trainings, what do I need to write down? I think you need to write down your worries. I think you need to write down what part of the business might be under pressure, what kind of part of your supply chain might be under pressure, and make the right decisions. Business is about adapting. If you don't adapt, you anyway be catched up and eaten up by somebody else. Although it's not easy for others to step into the market and compete with you, because you already have the momentum. The digital passport, the European digital product passport, is coming. These kind of initiatives are not just purely in Europe. If you look at the reasoning behind it, for example, also the implementation of a QR code on packaging replacing the barcode, this is also going to happen in the States. So the current barcode, to give you an idea, the current barcode just simply doesn't have enough digits to cope with the batch-driven traceability requirements that we will have in the market. So we need to move to something else, which will be a QR code. And that is aligned, of course, with the digital product passport. Will there be one format? No, anybody can choose its format, but there are certain rules for digital product passport, which I will share with you. It will be mandatory for accessing the EU market. Yeah, that makes sense. Why else? But there will not be a particularly one European system where you need to make a digital product passport, but there will be a custom system. What, how, when? It's not that the digital product passport by itself, although it is described in different legislation, that you can say, okay, it's need to be there from that date. There's mentioning of digital product passport as a principle, access to information for end users via QR code. And it's mentioned in various pieces of legislation, but the one that is mentioned in it most specifically, I would say, is the EcoDesign Sustainable Product Regulation that just was announced, active per July. 29 product categories. Many of those categories we know already because they're linked to energy labeling, for example. And so the regulation has been signed off. And in time, those 29 product categories will be activated. And they will start with, for example, laptops and telephones and monitors, because here's also including right to repair, repairability of products. So the eco-design has a whole scope, and giving the consumer access to information is one of them. But there's another interesting legislation coming up, and that is packaging and packaging waste regulation. And actually, we like that because we don't want to have, as I mentioned in the previous Compliance Tuesday, we don't want to have a lot of fragmented, not harmonized information on packaging, telling the consumer in Italy, you need to do it like this, and in France, you do it like that. We like to have an icon set and then explanation in various languages digitally. Nobody minds to have one basically explanation on how to deal with different kind of packaging. So the moment we need to have an explanation via QR code on packaging, all the products are in, because every product has some kind of packaging. Yeah. And don't forget, packaging regulation is also for food and feed, not only for non-food. The battery and waste batteries regulation already is activated and also has something that's called a battery passport, which is applicable already for various types of batteries. And then you are talking about storage systems and for small means of transportation. The idea there is that the consumer should be able to identify the quality of the battery, because if you want to be able to reuse or resell a battery, you need to be able to tell the next one how good the battery still is. So it's at this moment, it's very specific battery passport, giving you access to the status of the battery, but it also has information that is generically there on the battery supply chain and how much different kind of materials are in there. The trouble, as somebody said, with batteries compared to, for example, the EU deforestation-free products, there's no like an FSC on batteries. So the due diligence need to come basically from the supply chain. I've said it before and then say it today, there's no way that if you are on the end of the supply chain here in Europe, that you would be able to drive backwards to the supply chain all the way to a mine and figure out how they are doing. These supply chain partners have everything to lose because they make batteries 24/7, or they harvest raw materials from earth 24/7. If they don't get themselves certified and are not able to share that status with raw materials, then they will be out of business. So somewhere in the next years, certified supply chain partners will meet with your product manufacturers. But that means that you still have to have data that comes from those certified. And you see it with CBAM, it is about paying for CO2 compensation on steel and aluminium and cement. You cannot just guess and take a raw value. You need in a couple of months, maybe end of next year, the details of how much energy actually was used and how much of that was green when they were producing the raw materials. It's no way that you can calculate it backwards, but the one that produces those raw materials, they have the data, but they never knew they needed to share the data, and now the data needs to travel. And that is very important in the next part of this legislation. And I will share you with the digital product passport that is in the new draft toys regulation, which is quite interesting. And if you see what's happening there, you'll realize that business models will start to change as well. So you can look at legislation in different ways. You can try to solve it all from here, or you can start to realize that the complexity on this part of the supply chain, this part being European importers, brand owners, retailers, there's no way you can manage that. So your supply chain need to manage it. So in fact, it's about managing performance of suppliers. Technically, it's you can write it down, but I'll come to a more practical approach. Technically, you can say, okay, if you have a digital product passport, they cannot make one piece of legislation requiring a method A, another piece of legislation, method B. There need to be a harmonized way. Oh, thank God for that. So that's great. Open standards, which is also good, because you should not make your own digital product passport following your own data fields. So you can make your own, but they need to be comparable. Yeah, it's like if we wouldn't write these kind of things down for energy labels, everybody would make their own energy labels, which doesn't make any sense. But there's one word in point 3. I should make that 1, 2, 3 later, which is called machine readable. And that means that information that you are collecting and presenting to consumers via QR code also need to be able to be harvested by web crawlers from Google and other search engines. And I can tell you that's not an easy feat, because if you are now dealing with collecting information and having it somewhere in an Excel sheet, maybe on your own server, that is not machine readable, structured, and searchable. And so you can have your own platforms, but if we all agree that weight is called weight and that we register weight in grams and not in kilos or tons, then you need to follow that. Yeah. You also need to realize that some of the information need to become accessible to market participants, which could be the next one in line in your supply chain, and perhaps even market surveillance authorities. That's normal, okay? This is not something new. Market surveillance authorities, of course, always have the right to access information. So where you have now often a barcode that you purchase at GS1, that barcode is linked to a country and your business, and it has generic information about your address and your telephone number. It will then also have an option to forward reading the QR code to a certain website. So it will become pretty straightforward. If you convert that in simple ways, then you need to ensure that the information that you make available in the different batches stays in sync with what should be required. So you will see that the number of fields or the values in fields will increase over time for certain products. It's like a standard. At a certain moment, a certain version of a standard applies to a product. Now change standard to data. At a certain moment, a certain level of data is required, sometimes even for a member state. So there will be a threshold, for example, for packaging. At a certain moment, you need to declare what percentage of the plastic material used in packaging is coming from a recycled source of plastic. And at a certain moment, that value can no longer be less than a certain value. So data fields will have constraint changing over time. That's what I mean with you need to stay in sync with business. It's not like making one product passport and having it there forever. Every time you have a batch, you need to be sure that the same set of standards and data requirements are relevant for this batch and that you have fulfilled it. It needs to be 10 years available. That's not new. Quite complex information need to be accessible for search engine. This requires really some kind of IT structure. There are things like supply chain transparency. You see it already, and I will have the example later for the French legislation around textiles, where you say you must be able to find out as a consumer where actually the textile is coming from. So knowing where you have bought the product as a unique feature of your business is quite likely to disappear. Honestly, being in this retail market for quite a long time, 30 years, I think the market leaders in this world, they know where to buy products anyway. Yeah. All EU languages, that's relevant. So if you are selling products all over Europe, somebody in Italy scanning the QR code needs to find information in Italian. That is what is meant with that. Mandatory fields, as I say, you can have your own system, but you cannot make your own fields. And consumer interaction. You see that with the General Product Safety Regulation that will become live end of this year, where consumers need to be able to file a complaint or indicate that there was a hazardous situation via digital means. So to have a website address with a form or to have an dedicated email address for complaints on the product, you should also have these. When you scan a QR code, you need to basically get the same functionality. People are raising their hand. It's better to write down in the Q&A. So if you look at EcoDesign and the information on the digital product passport, then you see that there are technical performance aspects. You can see that compared with energy label. So it has to do with noise, it has to do with endurance time, standby time, etc. Materials and their origins. So where are certain raw materials coming from? And here you need to mention like specific things like the rare earths or precious metals. In many electronics, there's gold and silver and platinum, and there are so-called rare earths used. Where are they coming from? What percentage is there? How to repair the product? Instructions for how to repair and/or restrictions on how to recycle it. And that is more complex. Life cycle environmental impacts. How much energy is used? Many resources are used, and how to deal with that. To give you an idea about the impact on the EcoDesign, there's two aspects that I would like to share with you, which is not to do with digital product passport, but to give you an idea how serious it is. They are already have a ban on the destruction of unsold textiles and footwear. That's quite serious, right? And they will introduce, let's say, Green Deal, digital product passport-alike requirements. If you want to participate in procurement processes for the public authorities, you better be aligned with this part of legislation. And this 1.8 trillion euro of market size. So if you're not participating, not in sync with these kind of things, you will not score any key points when you are in the green public procurement processes, which makes sense, right? Why would the government allow people to participate that are not in sync with legislation? I'll take a sip of water. Maybe you do it as well. Some people ask, besides the QR code, must there be a written web link available? It's double. The digital link is a link to a website or an email address need to be on the address anyway. But this digital link doesn't need to be there to replace the QR code. So, what do you mean if you scan the QR code? They need also to have function to complaints form. In the digital product passport, you will have to have the same kind of access that you have as a consumer following the digital link if you want to file a complaint. It totally makes sense. You need to be able to reach out to the brand owner once you open that part of the digital product passport. It's not too complex. Are there any products that are not included in a digital product passport? It's the other way around. There will be more and more digital products in digital product passport. But when packaging will become part of this whole system and all products have packaging, then it doesn't really matter what's in the box. They won't exclude it. But most likely military products will be excluded. It's more the other way around. When will my product be activated? But in general, if we talk about 5 to 10 years away from now, every product will have it. Let's have a sip of water. You might think we will use our own process. The reality is, when we are looking at the state of most processes, which is Googling on Monday and trying to keep up with changes on Tuesday, and collecting information via email and reminders on post-its and putting some evidence somewhere in the cloud, it's impossible. That's not a process. You can call it a process and a way of working. And everybody has a process because you should have a process. But this is not fit for purpose. You will be overwhelmed with the efforts that you need to do unless you maybe have just one product. because if you just have one product and one supplier, then you may be able to do that. But in general, this is not something that you can deal with in the traditional way. Will there be then an EU digital product passport solution? No, definitely not. However, they are changing the way they deal with information for customs, because there's a lot of different systems when you arrive at Europe and they want to align it. And it's quite an effort. I think there's like 110 different systems that they are combining at this moment. There comes the new EU custom systems, and that will be able to interact with DPP information. I wrote it down. So it will collect different information the moment you start to import. It makes a little bit sense, you know. You don't want to have your melamine declaration as a PDF. You want to have digital information when you do our transportation, and you don't want to do your EU deforestation-free products registration digitally and then print it out and then make it part of the customs documents. So to digitalize that part makes sense. They aim for having a first release ready in 2028, and they will start, and probably for many of you, it's good news, they will start to mandate this kind of information usage for any parcel coming from outside Europe, heading for a consumer inside Europe. So the operational pressure will start on dropshipping B2C parcels first. Yeah. So although some products are still not covered by the digital product passport structure on a European way, I want you to consider the French HEC law, which is already applicable. And many of you either sell themselves in France or their customer sells in France. And you could see this as a predecessor of the digital product passport, and it will probably be eaten up by the digital product passport initiatives. The initiatives that the European Union writes down on that level also say that, you know, if you comply with this harmonized approach, there's no country that should demand another QR code or another system to work in parallel with this. So the harmonization is there, but prior to the harmonization, some countries want to be a little bit more greener than others, and the French are taking the lead. So this degree, the 2022-748, say that you need to inform consumers about the recyclability of packaging. And if you have electronics and batteries inside the packaging, you need to say something about the recyclability of that. And you need to mention information about precious metals and rare earths used in electronics. You need to mention what substances of very high concern are there. So this is not the same as knowing what is there and reporting it at the SCIP database, which is like a B2B kind of a requirement. No, this is consumer information. And if you are in garment and footwear, you need to mention parts of your supply chain, from which region it comes, raw materials, where is the basic fabric made, and where is basically the garment assembled or the footwear assembled. If you look at that information, that is already a lot of effort. But if you look at the initiatives that are following in, and now you start to get aligned with digital product passport and life cycle adjustments, this is about how much land is used for what, how much water is used for what, which could be very relevant for garment production. How much energy is used, and which part of that comes from fossil industry, and which part is then coming from renewable sources like wind or solar. What kind of minerals and metals are used, emissions, but it is just mind-boggling. If you look at this part of the world, looking back to a supply chain, it's mind-boggling. But I often say in my training, if somebody's making apple pies 24/7, they actually really know what's in the apple pie. It's not that they arrive at the factory in the morning and think, okay, there's a box outside my factory waiting. what can I produce from that? Yeah. So somewhere in the supply chain, they already have the data or should be able to easily start to calculate that data. They just never bothered, and they never bothered to figure out what would be the best way to share this kind of data. Don't try to solve the complexity of the world that is connected to all the products that are in your assortment when there is somebody in the supply chain out there making those products 24/7. After all, there was a reason why you outsourced production, right? Somebody is asking, is there a timeline per product group when you must have DPP? Peter, they will follow from the implementation acts. So the framework of the EcoDesign is there, and the European Union has allowed itself to set the schedule within the framework via implementation acts. That's interesting. So you need to really follow implementation acts. The answer to the question is use product IP, and then you know. Yeah, I don't think you need to understand exactly why. To know exactly when this will be applicable, because anyway, it will become applicable somewhere for most products. And packaging could be the less invasive to start with, because you start to ask questions on your supply chain about how is the packaging built up, which suppliers are involved, second tier, third tier, on the carton box, on the tape, on the whatever parts that you use in the product. Nobody in the supply chain will say, I won't tell you because it's a secret. But if you want to do an exercise with your team, pick one product and one supplier that you think, okay, they are okay, friendly to us in that sense, and start together to do that exercise. And then you realize that you are having the wrong end of the stick, because that work is tremendous. Can you imagine that if the digital product passport in the future, and I'm talking about if packaging will be signed off Q1 2025 with a transition period of 18 months, and you will eat up 9 to 12 months of that 18 months, then somewhere next year you will need to start to collect data on packaging. End of 2025. Can you imagine that if your supplier changes one of their packaging partners, that your data pool is no longer valid? So they changed a supplier of tape, and then you need to start again. Doesn't make sense. So you need to reorganize the packaging part of your supply chain. Rather than always buying packaging from your vendor, you probably need to start first limiting the scope and size of the problem. But it goes a little bit further even. And for that, I show you what the toys regulation is writing about digital product passport. We are reading all of this, and we are stacking data point after data point after data point. We are already over 1,000 data points relevant for the scope that product IP is covering, that you need to maintain somewhere. So some of you just have a limited number of products, and you will not have them all, but some of you have really, really broad scope, and you will be affected by all. So each product needs to have a new unique product identifier, name, address of the manufacturer, authorized representative, that makes sense, name and address of economic operator responsible for carrying out the task, that could be the EUAR. But now look at this. The mention that this part is issued under the sole responsibility of the manufacturer. Here's all by other things. So I want you to focus on this. I'll focus on this one. Read it and breathe. Brand is manufacturer. If the digital product passport is declaration of conformity, if I am importing a product for my private label customer, will it be my digital product passport, or will it be the digital product passport of my customer, private label customer? It will be his digital product passport. So where does the QR code come from, and where does it link to? to the digital product passport environment of my customer. And who's going to sign off legally because they are responsible? Where previously I will share data and my private label customer basically will sign off their declaration of conformity, review information. But having a digital product passport means already that this has been done. So either you are in a certified chain of arranging and guaranteeing that this has been done, or I could even foresee that this could be the end of many private label programs where it becomes like a licensing model. Yes, I'll supply products with my customer brand, but it will be my address. And I will be dealing with the digital product passport. This also is very relevant for gift and premium sector, where you always put the brand of your customer on the product. There's no way that all of these customers, sometimes very small, can set up a system and deal with this. So they all understand that this is a burden. They don't all understand what is actually the true cost, but they will understand that this is added value. So when this digital product passport and the way information will need to be gathered and processed and shared, when this really has impact on your business, it also has impact on the businesses around you. So it will also create opportunities, but not if you stick in yesterday, because yesterday cannot actively participate in tomorrow. This is really rethinking. So I'm very happy that you are here today, and you might be triggered because you want to learn about the complexity of digital product passport. But the real complexity is that you need to reevaluate your position in the market. With whom am I doing business? For what products? With who? What are my supply chain roles? Because depending on your route to market, the complexity will increase. But there are also opportunities, because the farther away from the original manufacturer and the broader the scope of products, the more complex it comes. If you are an average DIY store with, let's say, 100,000 different SKUs over a year in your market, are you really able to maintain all of this for all the products, ranging from, I don't know, detergents to work clothes to timber to really? Is it really so relevant that your name, brand, and your address together are on all these products? Do consumers really look at the address before they buy a product? Are you that vain to have all that work? I don't think so. I don't think so. So I want you to read this kind of legislation always from a business point of view. Not one by one hitting you in the face. Circular economy, transparency on supply chain, reuse of existing material, repairability. These kind of things are the top themes. The themes in the market, and your business is working in that market. And if you start to translate this as impact on your business, then and only then you can deal with all these kind of legislation, because you will have a placeholder in your model and the way you operate and the way you make decisions. And some of the decisions will be adding certain parts to the business, and some will say goodbye to it. That's normal. And one of the reasons that this is really and I use this picture obviously for a reason, that this is really a bump under some of the businesses, that many of you, and you truly need to be honest, have never calculated the cost of compliance in the price. Which is fine. It allowed you to make money and grow, but you really need to calculate the cost of compliance into the business model. It's a little bit like CBAM, if you start to calculate the cost of adding CO2 compensation investments in reducing CO2 in the supply chain, like we have done in Europe, then you see that some of the products suddenly become 40 cents, 50 cents, 10 cents, $1 or euro more expensive a piece, even depending on where you buy it. Some countries like China, where they are using more green energy even for the production of steel, will outcompete, for example, India, where there's not enough data available on how eco-friendly aluminium is produced, for example. So the moment the cost of compliance, which is also the internal effort, this is not, I'm not talking about certification. This is not about retesting if a product is electrical safe. We didn't change the electrons. Look at the effort that you need to do and or your supplier need to do. Do you have the right set of suppliers that can start to pick up this kind of work? And once you start moving into this world, you see that actually the first step is to identify with whom am I dealing? Do I really have a list of my first tier suppliers, or are these agents, sourcing agents, which is fine. They have a perfectly suitable role in the market. But for you, if they are sourcing agents, the number one, then you need to know the number two and the number three. And if you're dealing directly with the factory, you need to know the number one and the number two. Start with that. So looking at many of the bill of materials that we receive from factories, or you receive from factories in your file, where there's like 6 different components, and they all claim that they make them themselves, and they write things down like metal or plastic and don't identify, or paint, and there's no details. So there you know that you have a challenge, because obviously the guy that makes the apple pie, he doesn't make the apples, and he doesn't make the dough, and he doesn't make the butter. He's buying things. Yeah. And if he sends you a bit of material or a bit of substances and he claims he's doing it all, then you know, all himself, then you know that the first challenge is to say, I want you to start moving from non-fo to info, from non-fo to info. And that will take time. And it has nothing to do with DPP or toys. All these legislation will have the same challenge. If you receive non-fo today, you will have great trouble to deal with the info later. If you never receive info, then you probably become out of business, because no info is no access. Yeah. There will be a lack of certified supply chain partners, and it will take time to get those partners certified. So this is not something that will be done overnight. This really requires management of change. I would like, together with you, to go over this number of topics. And in order to do that, I will, where's my share? I'll take you to Mentimeter. Would you be so kind to participate for a few moments with me anonymously in going over these questions, like, are you IT-wise ready? Are your suppliers ready? And do you have the in-house knowledge? It's quite simple. Just scan with your QR code, and it will be interesting. I will share the statistics back to you. It will be interesting. You are not alone in this. So they don't do this in Brussels to make your life miserable. It is never about that. Brussels is not busy with your business. So sometimes it might be wise to align with other small businesses in the same industry. Say, hey, why are we not participated in this effort? Maybe we need to look for a supply chain of packaging together with others, because we all will benefit. Yeah? That is what I mean, is looking at this from a business point of view and not from a compliance point of view. Great. We are with many already. That's good. Niels asks, does it mean that the French ADME agency is creating their own type of scoring system for products? Yeah. If you look at the fields that I showed you from ADME, these are typical fields that are part of life cycle assessments from large products. So they are like a predecessor of what's coming towards us from the EcoDesign. Yeah? How do you suggest to collect packaging data from suppliers who use some corner shop in the middle of nowhere, who basically have no idea what they're doing? Yes, you cannot. The whole reason for this legislation is that you cannot accept this kind of packaging anymore. Yeah. So it's hitting the nail on its head. Exactly. Don't forget that the requirement to minimize the footprint of packaging was already in many EU member states legislation before the EU was there. In the Netherlands, 1973, we already had this written down. Okay, let's go to a slide on the Mentimeter. You can type in some of your emotions currently after you have listening to me 50 minutes. We still have like 15 minutes to go in the session. I think you should be able to. Yeah. I really feel that you guys are very honest. I would definitely type these things. Even when we read this new legislation, and we are a team productivity, we're all coming from this area, we are used to read this. We are reading this and thinking really, OMG, how to build a platform and extend the platform that we have to be able to support you. And so when we look at the data fields, and what I said to you, managing the data fields will be like managing the standards. It's basically rebuilding Product IP one more time, and we're building a data point manager that has, for what product and what time, for what market do I need to fill in what data, and what are the thresholds? So what are the limits? That's why we are investing in IT and regulatory for this. Okay, very, very, very honest. So I will share this. You can put it on the wall later. Let's move to the next one. If you look at managing this from your point of view, you heavily need to rely on suppliers. And if you rely on others, this is a basic model. You look at things like willing and able. And if the supplier is not willing, then it doesn't really matter if they are able. And to make them from not willing to willing, that is a commercial part. Yeah? I can call it commercial motivation. If the effort becomes bigger and your business with that supplier is not so relevant for that supplier, then there lies a part of the key of willing. And able is something that we can solve together, because able has to do with basic knowledge and understanding. And sometimes it's just lingo, language, oh, you mean that. And the moment they are willing and able, you can delegate. So the goal will be to identify who will be willing, not able, and to solve the able, and who are willing and able, and push as much work as possible to those who are willing and able. Because it doesn't really matter if you make a decision today about the competence that they have today. The way you work together doesn't have anything to do with the knowledge they have today. You can say to them, I want you to put it on an old style DVD, burn it and send it to me. That doesn't change anything about what they do. The method is different, but you want them to become efficient in collecting, organizing, reviewing, and sharing data. And the more you push that to your suppliers, the more you free up at your end. This is basically like a market surveillance approach. If you get data shared from your suppliers, you don't need to look at it always. You need to have a risk-based approach. Every second, 2 containers land in Rotterdam Harbor. You really think that the Dutch market surveillance authorities can look at it all? No. They cannot look even at 1%. No, not 1,000 of percent. No, they do risk-based approach. Yeah. Willing but not able majority. That's good. That's good, because moving from not able to able, we can solve that together. Training, knowledge, clarification. Use Product IPedia, use supplier days. And maybe later I will have the option for you to add some suggestions. Maybe dedicated Compliance Tuesdays in Chinese and or other languages for those suppliers on certain topics. Because everybody that we move from not able to able will be a great benefit of all. This part, if you want to solve it internally, I cannot. But if you want to start solving it externally, I can. Yeah. It's really, really very relevant. The advantage of using a software as a service is that you don't need to invest in anything. It's already there, and we need to just connect your current information system to ours. And having said that, again, changing the way you collect information doesn't change anything about reality out there in the market, but it changed something in your reality at your time. Somebody said, currently we are in a situation where we know that we don't know. Let's start using product IP so we know what we don't know, and at least we can make the right decisions. So don't be afraid to know what you don't know, what is missing. If you already know that you might be things missing, it's better to know what you're missing, because then you can make the right decisions. Not all your suppliers, not all your products deserve equal attention. I cannot give you more hours in a day. I cannot give you more budget. But if you want to spread it out like a sauce over everything, then you're in for the wrong game. Having heard what I said now, do you agree with me that this will influence your product portfolio? Some of you would have a very specific portfolio, probably say no, which for a good reason. So it's not so relevant that you answer this accurate. It's more the question, are you willing also to make decisions about that? Are you able to make decisions around that? So do you know your 20-80, which 20% of your products are very relevant for 80% of your business? Yeah. It's very simple. If you never calculated the cost of compliance into your products, you probably never said bye-bye to a supplier or never say bye-bye to a product range. You just add them. And that was fine, but it's no longer is fine. So this is not a negative about the past. This is have to do with the future. You know, don't blame yourself. Back to the keynote. So that was a Zen moment. You can still stick into the Mentimeter because I will give you the opportunity to leave some remarks there that we can share with others. So we all agree that in order to make the business survive, you have to start to change. So the new era of product compliance is actually about management of change. And this is a very difficult one because product compliance has a negative connotation, and it's often considered as pure cost rather than part of the doing business, which means that it's difficult to change because we have labeled it negatively. The real challenge is to make it really part of the business. And in many a business, there are different columns, the buying column, the IT column, the logistics column, the sales column, but this touches everything. So in large businesses, the complexity of this is not to tackle it because they can, but how to coordinate it. Who is the problem owner for this new era? Is that the ESG CSR part of the team or the product compliance team? Or can you actually still separate these? No? So the skill will matrix is very relevant, and the commercial motivation needs to be from your end. But in our flow, it will say the willing and not able. You use product IP by collecting information in the beginning on certain key products, just to be able to identify what actually is the not able. And based on the not able, via training and rewarding, we'll move to able. So in the beginning, we collect still information. This is the traditional way. But the moment they are willing and able, we don't want information and organize information for our suppliers. They should do that as part of their 24/7 operation, 24/7 cost. They need to become in sync with Brussels. Otherwise, I better run that factory, you know. And the moment they start doing what you are doing now to them, they will start doing them to their vendors, invite them to collect information, and at a certain moment, asking for prepaid file requests on components as well. And then you have started the change. So the change in the flow of information is a relevant, really relevant part of dealing with the complexity of legislation. You cannot find enough people, even if you have the budget, to type in the data. It's not a business model. Yeah. Yes, but Casper, the quality of the data is not good enough. Yeah, that's able. Okay. That doesn't have anything to do with the flow. I rather have a conclusion about that they have poor quality in the file than that I need to look at the data one by one. Yeah. So in order to deal with it, we need to increase the efficiency, because there will be an increased complexity and there will be more workload. And you must deal with this because the rhythm goes up, SKU-based to batch-based. The compliance evidence is expanding from purely test reports to test reports and data points, which might differ for different products, but there will be data points. And for you, it's a massive amount, but for somebody making apple pie 24/7, it's just apple pie data. So the different data belongs differently to different products. If you have washing machines, you want to have data on how much water is used by washing, and same with dishwasher, and you want to have decibels, and you don't want to have decibels in noise for lights. So the data point set is there, different sets apply for different products. And you will get single topic files, so you have more files, because batteries will have declaration of conformity, but packaging will also get a declaration of conformity, not CE, but a declaration. And these single topic files need to be merged with article files, because articles are in packaging and batteries are in articles. So you have more files in more complex files in a higher rhythm, which is more work. Do you really want to have this work? Or do you want to start a change that your suppliers realize that they need to get themselves organized on information that they anyway have because they're making products? There's one other important thing in the flow. You look at EU deforestation-free products. If you need to have a number 72 hours before products arrive at customs, then you need to do that before products arrive at customs. But if you have a QR code and a declaration that's printed on a product, the moment the product arrives in the market, it all need to be there, it all need to be true. It's a different case today. In many a case, we sell products with CE, we maybe get a request from somebody and we draw up the declaration of conformity afterwards, which might be perfect DOC, don't get me wrong. But you could fix that part later, not having to do all the work every time, which is a way out of actually putting the cost of compliance to all the products, right? And with a digital product passport, you cannot fix things afterwards. You need to be ready. That means that you need to be in sync before shipment. Yeah. Complex because it changes processes. Last but not least, look at the battery legislation, look at EU deforestation-free products. It's great that that tree was a sustainable tree, but when it was harvested by kids and then transported by oil-leaking trucks, then it doesn't make any sense. So we need to understand more about the supply chain, and these things take time. It takes time to map suppliers. It takes time for them to prove that they are aligned. It's impossible for you to audit them all. So there are programs for that, SA 8000, Amphori BCI, FSC, you name them. But they don't have all the capacity of the planet available as well. So things will take time. Yeah. To give you an idea, companies that review technical files created by their suppliers require just 10 to 20% of the effort of making a technical file based on the information they get by the suppliers. And one of the reasons is that if I review a set, I review a one set. If I review, or if I need to make a set based on information, it's a fragmented process. I will get 1 or 2 documents first, and then more and more and more. So I can give you space within your team using product IP and starting to do prepaid file requests frees up FTEs in your team. Yeah, it's really true. And if you say, but my supplier cannot do it, hey, if he's not willing and not able, we fix the able. But if you say he won't do it, then it's another challenge. Looking at the digital product passport, there are already different initiatives. And some of them will say, yeah, you can use my system and it's for free because, well, there's no such thing as free, isn't there? Yeah, Facebook is free and Instagram is free. If you tell them who you are and you are subject to advertisement. That, dear audience, is not allowed for the digital product passport. It's not allowed to harvest data of consumers scanning a QR code landing on pages of digital product passport. Okay, so how to make money then? Providing advertisement on these pages in general, well, you might be able to do that, but the moment they click on it, you know that somebody has clicked on it. I would say that's not free. This would be the same as I have a phone and it's on, you have a phone and it's on, and we meet together for somewhere in the supermarket, and by accident we're standing in the galley for the peanut butter section. And then we walk away and then both of us get a text message, hey, you forgot to buy peanut butter. That's how free data works. Not for digital product passport. Not for digital. Explicitly written down. Okay. What was the fine again that Uber yesterday got from the Dutch authorities for not following GDPR? Was it 260 million euro? Something like that. I think they will be very, very much on top of this. So if you want to evaluate suppliers, which you should do, we could be an option, but you could also use us to collect data and then forward it to your system and do it by yourself. But you have to realize that if you are not in sync with what should be there, but just have some system that says we can store it all, if they cannot tell you what should be there, then there's no use. Yeah, because what are you going to ask? And if they don't help you to also collect the data and analyze the data, I would say if it's just a portal to publish, there's not enough added value. But you get the slides, I'll leave it up to you to judge that. To give you an idea, product IP QR code link to a public file is what we have since November 2010, because we always have realized that it will be very relevant for some companies to already start sharing their efforts with consumers. Yeah. Was it called a digital product passport then? No, we call it the public file because digital product passport as an entity don't exist at that moment. But the functionality we have, and it works. And we are expanding that functionality to keep in sync with the requirements. So I noticed the words that you wrote down. And I think the question is very valid to say, do you really want to stop the compliance stress? If the answer is yes, you need to start thinking about how to start the change. And you can contact me or my colleagues because there is a way out and a way forward. It will take time. All the market surveillance authorities would be incredibly happy with companies that are moving towards change, because there's plenty of your competition that won't move, which they will start to focus on. Any authority will realize that this is a hell of a job. But if you are managing change, that means that in a year it will be better than today. And that's what it's about. A way out and a way forward. Start instantly means don't waste time to start the change, because it will really take time to maybe 1 or 2 years in your buying seasons to get everything involved. We are ready. We are ready for you. Yep. Stay informed. You will get the slides. I will put it back to the Mentimeter so you can actually start answering some of the questions. Thank you for listening to me just over 1 hour. Still some questions in the chat. I will contact that and share the Mentimeter again, because you can also write questions here, and then probably I will collect some of those questions. I'll leave this open. You can leave the session, but I'll leave this one open. You can still access it, and I will collect them, see if there's like FAQs, and can share it with all. Some of the questions here in the mail, sorry, in the Q&A. Do we need to register products in the database as well, like April? No, but there will be a customs system that importers need to register. First, B2C dropshipping 2028. Ultimo, I think they're written down in 2035. There will be some kind of a system where you need to identify. Don't forget, today, in many business segments like food contact materials, you're already obliged to identify that you are operating in certain segments. So it's not new. Many of these things are actually not new, but they are like becoming mandatory. Does Product also check contents of example manuals to verify warnings, etc.? Yes. But that's not part of the platform service, although we are considering to see if we can build some parts of the requirement list around that kind of information. But there's a separate service that we have. It's called artwork check. Just via artwork@productp.com, you can get your quotation for that. I understand the product passport can become a requirement for any physical product, at least in the framework of EcoDesign. But concerning a new proposal on packaging, I can only find the DPP being mandatory for reusable packaging, or if one opts in to provide information teaching on recycled and plastic. In addition, it will be a transition phase of 6.5 years on these specific. Do I miss something here? Well, it's not been signed off yet on packaging. But if you sell it in France today, you already need to have that information today. So I think you will be happy if they shorten the requirements and transition periods in the market rather than dealing with non-harmonized. One of the things is they probably have a transition period, but if you comply with the harmonized approach of packaging waste, you don't need to apply with the disharmonized approach of Italy, Spain, France, etc., etc. I can give you 10, 15 business reasons to go for that. Yeah. Not too many questions yet on the Mentimeter. If this is it for now, I'll leave it for here. I'll save the questions, probably put some answers. Thank you very much to attend this. Take your Zen moment at the lunch, and hope to hear from you soon. Thank you. Bye bye.